Again, we are recording the session, and we do have a YouTube channel we use for distributing these. We'll continue to just keep sending that out as reminders to people. You can go out there and see past meetings and this one once it's published. Some logistics for today: just try to mute yourself if you're not speaking. Obviously, everyone knows the phrase of the year is, hey, you're on mute. So when you talk, try to unmute if you want. You don't have to be on video. You can if you want. Sessions being recorded. Ultimately, today, we're going to go through a ton of stuff. I think I've got everything here. We're going to go from kind of what's new in SharePoint, Teams, security around all of this, and then the Power Platform. And then at the end, with our time, we'll do ask anything. And Jeff was kind of doing that already here for us because he's got to leave a little early. But one other really fun thing, if you haven't used it yet, because you got to be in a big enough meeting and have Teams, but you can use together mode. So in this case, I'll go up here, got to be using the preview features of Teams and go into together mode. It definitely can be fun. This is me talking. But today we're going to have Drew talking first about some SharePoint stuff and beyond. Then we'll probably go over to Matt over here talking about Teams. Then Chris will join us a little bit later and jump in on security side, and then we'll finish up with Anthony over here about the Power Platform and what's going on. So again, we probably have a lot of detail to cover, so feel free to post information in the chat. Also, use the raise hand feature if you'd like. I'll try to pay attention to that as other people are talking. We won't interrupt a ton, like I said, to make sure we get through everything, but we may save some of that stuff for Ask Anything at the end. All right, with that, Drew, take it away, if you can.
Yep. So I'm going to talk about SharePoint. SOIs is actually what sometimes is referred to internally, which is SharePoint, OneDrive, Yammer, and Stream. And I'm going to go through some of the key updates that I kind of pulled out, along with all of the roadmaps for Ignite here. There have been a couple small changes since, as far as some things that kind of went live, but I'll try to highlight those as I move forward, as I kind of go through this. And then I'm going to, in the kind of time I have, I'm going to try to save multiple minutes at the end to kind of dive a little bit more into SharePoint syntax. I'll talk a lot more about that, but a really big offering that went live in the last month here. So with that, kind of starting out with OneDrive, and one of the key announcements there is around what's called Add to OneDrive. So this is something that when you looked at like different competing products, it was in it. The main scenario here is that if you have folders that are shared with you, so let's say Matt or John shared a folder with me, I could actually, it would only show in like that shared with me action. I can actually go in there, click on that, and add it back into OneDrive, and it will treat it like I would have any other OneDrive file. So even with folders that are shared with me, you kind of can move it into a singular experience as we start to see people kind of working between OneDrives. And I've seen this actually, I just started rolling out. I think I saw it in a tenant in the last week or two here. So this is one that was announced and is now rolling out to you. The next one is a big one for me, for someone that has helped companies roll out OneDrive, is the ability to have sync admin reports. This one's not there yet, but what is going to happen is that, let's say we're deploying OneDrive in your organization, right? Or you already have it deployed. The one thing you never know is OneDrive sync actually working for users? Right? I've deployed it. Do I have to 1,000 machines? You have no idea how they're running, and if users have issues. So this admin report is going to give us the ability to see, does Matt have an issue? Does John have an issue? Do we need to have help desk work with them? And where I see this becoming really important is with known folder move, when you're pushing that out, because that will do some large scale movement for files in OneDrive. So if you haven't deployed OneDrive yet, this will be a nice one for you to track when it's out. To kind of jump through some, so to me, those were kind of the two big ones. There wasn't a big OneDrive release this year at all. bigger stuff within the last years. They have smaller ones. They have dark mode now, or dark mode on the web will be coming. I think that's coming to kind of come with personal and consumer. On the mobile app, they are adding a home tab, so they put some good investment into the OneDrive mobile app. If you don't have it, you really should. It's really nice and it kind of integrates all of your files. But they have this home tab, which is going to allow you to kind of give you a better picture of files kind of across your OneDrive. A little more AI driven concept for you. One thing I hope Matt's going to talk about is file sharing integration in Teams, which I saw hit my tenant yesterday, accidentally, or nicely. Which what this means is that the sharing UI and the sharing concepts kind of come from the OneDrive team, the OneDrive SharePoint team, and that modern sharing UI that you have, where you can pick like people in my organization or anyone or people with existing access, that is coming into Teams, and that should be hitting your tenant very soon, as it just hit mine yesterday, or I noticed it yesterday. So that's nice. From a sharing perspective, one of the things that used to happen would be if I moved a file from, let's say, OneDrive to SharePoint, that the sharing would break. So if I shared a file with Matt, or Matt shared a file with me, either way, if we moved it, what's going to happen in the future is that the sharing will stay consistent. So you won't break it. And then some smaller ones, you're going to get a summary when I'm sharing to kind of like see what's in that file when I'm sharing a file in an email, and some offline edit support for Office. So if I download a file in my OneDrive app offline, I'm going to be able to edit it, and it will manage it and allow you to sync up. I think this would be helpful for when it moves into iPads. So for me, the big one here with OneDrive was add to OneDrive and the sync admin reports. But overall, it's kind of a small one for OneDrive. They released some of the speed. They said it got a little bit better, but from a roadmap perspective, everything in green is what is already out, or very, very close to rolling out. So we did get the 100 gigabyte that was delayed for, I think, like 6 months. That's definitely out now. Everything in black is kind of what I talked about. So the team sharing, the offline edits, admin sync reports. So for OneDrive, we're going to see more coming with the sync tool and some more administration. It's kind of the next big ones. I think they included too much stuff that they already did. Some of those were like full year old, like differential sync. Any questions on anything from OneDrive side?
We had one question in the chat for people if you want to check that out, but the shortcuts do sync to File Explorer. There's a nuance. So if you sync the SharePoint site directly and then do a shortcut to the same location, you'll get an error in the sync and you'll have to kind of pick one. So that's kind of how that works.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. One thing that's coming out next year that I talked about, I forgot to add it on there, is Mac. So for anyone that has deployed Mac, the known folder move actions to allow you to sync documents, desktop, and document pictures will come to KFM, which is interesting. I couldn't think they were going to do that because it's like built into the OS. So that's pretty cool.
Yay! Finally, hallelujah! Do you have a date for that? That has been my biggest barrier for people.
I bet you not even before next summer. My guess, if it's top of mind, it's at least multiple months out.
So basically, you're just teasing me. Fine. Thanks.
That was their tease. That was, but yes, it's definitely top of mind. So they don't even have a date for it yet.
So I set this on the when I see it, I'll worry about it. Great, thanks.
That's what I've done. Yeah, I haven't even. I even put it as like a last bullet point for that one because it's so far.
That is the hugest barrier for me because I have people that they just make so many damn OneNote notebooks. It's just anyway. Thanks.
So on to Yammer. So Yammer were the bigger releases that came out earlier this summer with the new UI for Yammer. So a lot of the enhancements that came out this year that were announced are around kind of like a front end standpoint. So like enhancing some of the existing functionality with the way new conversations look. So a big one we have, which I think is going to be useful, is going to be priority announcements. So inside of your communities, you're going to be able to take an announcement, move it up to the top, notify people about it, to start really driving interaction inside of your communities. So I know this was a large one that people asked for, and I think it will get some pretty good usage. With that, we're also going to kind of stay in the conversation side. We're going to get featured conversations. So let's say there is communities that are pretty active, and there's maybe there was an event that just happened, and you wanted to keep that conversation live and bring it to the top, not just as an announcement. You'll be able to feature those and kind of bring those into different apps if you want, or really kind of highlight specific conversations that are happening, which will kind of eliminate some of the potentially less important ones around it. One thing that will be really nice from when someone helps deploy this is going to be insights around Yammer. So they will be enhancing the general visibility of insights now that once you're into native Yammer. So you'll be able to get actually like community insights, so seeing like how many members you have, message counts, some general like when messages occur. We're going to be getting conversation level insights, so how things are, what are the activity within my conversations themselves. And then for if anyone's hosting live events inside of Yammer, you're going to get live events insights as well. And that's actually what this middle screen is here. So you can see the viewers, location, department, all of that kind of within Yammer itself. So a lot more on visibility into what's happening inside of Yammer instead of kind of just letting it go. So anyone curating and moderating Yammer today, I definitely think like the conversation insights are one that I think is going to be helpful to see. You could feature one and then check the insights for that.
So that'll be available to anyone who owns a Yammer group, not just like admins or whatever.
But yeah, my understanding, the community, all of those would be, except for the live events one, I think, because that will depend on where the live event is being hosted inside of the community. But yeah, it's not, as far as I haven't seen it, but as far as everything that I've heard and documented and demoed, it's for your Yammer community owner.
Yay.
We are getting a new live event experience. So what we have is, what's coming is when I'm doing a live event in Yammer, you'll actually have the kind of feed next to it. So you'll be able to kind of review and reply in the conversation right in line. One that I think is going to, I think it's out now. I haven't worked on Yammer in a week or in a little bit, but reactions. So to be honest, I didn't realize how much I used reactions inside of Teams, like a lot. And I think this is going to be quite useful in Yammer as well, to be able, especially the like and the heart and things like that. So I think, again, smaller visual UIs that we're getting from a Yammer side. At a higher level, search is going to, finally, it's going to show up in search. So you have to be native Yammer. The whole move to native Yammer earlier this year, like that's big, but that's what gives us retention. That's what gives us search. All of that is there. So if you're not native Yammer, make sure you kind of plan to make that shift. One that's a little controversial, actually for me, is around delegate posting. So the concept of post on behalf of. So if you have, let's say, a CEO blog or a CEO post, you're going to be able to post on behalf of that person. And the reason I kind of consider that a little controversial is because sometimes you're taking the concept out of the leadership or someone else owning that, versus if they're invested into it, you're most likely to get a little bit better engagement than someone kind of sending a newsletter on behalf of someone else. So it's definitely an ask from the community, but we'll see how that is being used. Mute and hide conversations. So if you're seeing ones that you don't want necessarily to be showing up anywhere, or if you think it's just time for them to go away, they're just not providing value, let's say in the community as a moderator, you can manage that. And what I held off on the end, so they do have a desktop app, but if anyone's using progressive web apps inside of Edge, if you haven't done it for Teams, I think it's very, very nice. You can actually go into, if you're in Edge, you can actually go up into the settings and pull Teams out as a progressive web app. So Yammer's getting that as well. So it's really nice if you're in multiple community or multiple networks, or don't want the app, or want to kind of keep it open on your desktop. The PWA for it will be coming as well. Some smaller ones here. The one I want to highlight is going to be around in-place retention policies. So within Yammer, native Yammer, if you build a retention policy, Yammer will be an action or a location that you can add retention to. So if you're in a regulated industry at all, you're going to be able to apply those retention policies inside of Yammer. And the little teaser at the end there is Yammer conversations in Project Cortex. When we get to Cortex, I'll talk a little bit more about that, along with topics. Now, when these things are happening, one thing that's nice about Yammer is that they're all soon. So everything I kind of talked about, if you're managing Yammer, is planned to be out before the end of the year. And obviously all subject to change, but the conversation piece, the reaction piece, the templates for it, the post on behalf of, all of those are planned to be out by the end of the year. That wonderful little nuance that they put on the bottom. Target timeframes represent our best estimates. So jumping into Stream, outside of Cortex, I'd actually say Stream had the biggest announcements in this platform than anything else, because Stream is going back into Microsoft 365. So they're calling it the new the language is the new vision of Stream. But if anyone ever has worked with Office 365 video in the past, where videos were hosted inside of SharePoint and then like pushed back into Azure and kind of just lived in SharePoint, and then videos were moved fully out into Stream. So we migrated content out into Stream, which was all its own user experience, its own web app, its own portal. It didn't connect back into Microsoft 365, so we never had APIs. We never had. It was never included inside a search. It was never able to kind of comply with retention and compliance. So what's happening is that is going to be called Classic Stream, and there is going to be a migration Stream into Microsoft 365. So what that means is that the videos that are hosted in Stream today, the videos are now going to be hosted in SharePoint and OneDrive. So they're taking the container of what Stream was and putting the videos back into SharePoint and OneDrive. And instead of having the Stream like secondary user experience, Stream is going to be treated like a piece of content. So just like Word creates documents, Excel creates Excel files, PowerPoint creates PowerPoints, Stream is going to create videos. So you're going to have, as you see in this bottom left screen, just like your web app for PowerPoint and Word, you're going to have a web app for video, where you're going to be able to create, upload, view, just like an Office application. And with that, you're going to get that old Stream portal is going to go away, and Stream is going to be more invested inside of SharePoint. So when you think of a video portal, the Stream video portal or channel curation, things like that, that's going to be in a Stream portal. In a SharePoint portal, with just showing the videos that are hosted inside of SharePoint.
So can I ask questions about this? Because I have many questions about this.
Yep.
So one, we used to have O365 video, which many of us still have, and Microsoft was all talking about migrating that into Stream, great, blah, 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 and then that fell off somewhere, I don't know. So now we have some video in Office 365 and some in this Stream. Now I know that all the O365 stuff is being renamed M365. So when you say M365 here, are you talking about a whole new thing, or are we renaming the original O365 video?
Yeah, that's a good question, Rachel. So it's a new thing. So O365
now
video.
We have 3 video services.
Well, no, so O365 video is like completely gone. Like that is, I mean, it's not even in the toolbar or app. I mean, that is gone.
A lot of people still have it and still use it and still access their stuff and are still, yeah. Okay.
From a support standpoint, it's not there.
I
but
understand
the
that.
back end of it is that still was based in SharePoint. So they had the logic of files hosted in a site collection over there. And yes, this is why I think it's one of the most interesting announcements, because you're right. We went, and I work with customers to move their stuff from video into stream, and now we're going back. Right? Like it's 100% agree, and that's why I think it's important to understand that. The reason behind it is around the capabilities of when videos were hosted in SharePoint before stream. So back to 4 years ago, SharePoint was not ready for it. They didn't have the rendering capabilities, so they pushed everything into Azure. They didn't have the modern UI yet, so the vision.
It was bad. I admit
it was poor. So they created a new environment. But now that the SharePoint backend and the OneDrive backend has scaled in the way that it has, they're bringing it back over to get the capabilities of retention, compliance, external sharing, the user creation experience. So there is validity into why it's happening, but you are 100% correct that it is a split brain environment, and it's gone from 1 to 2 back to 1.
So next part 2, or maybe about this in a minute, is there's a bunch of functionality in Stream that many of us really, really love. For instance, if you do a live event in Teams, did you know that you can get a translation into Klingon and then upload that translation as a caption script for you? Yes, I did it. It works. Somebody who knows Klingon, it works. Anyway, there's a lot of cool things about playback speed. There's a lot of cool things about Stream that we're not going to have if these videos are stored in. Convince me that this is a good idea, because so far I am not seeing it. I'm seeing a loss of functionality that everybody likes, like the automatic, it automatically makes captioned, like you in your middle screen here, right? What do you call those? Scripts, transcript.
Yep. So kind of jumping through that, I'll come back to that because I have a couple of seconds on, I have a couple of bullet points on that. But the scenario is it's not going to be as fully functional on day 1. Period. There will be functionality in Stream. Their goal is to have that fully functional, the same functionality that exists in Stream today, with the transcript capabilities, with the translation capabilities, with the video insight capabilities. That is all planned to be in new Stream. So that's kind of what they're calling it. Timeline, that's what I'll kind of speak to. But as of the first day, no. But you're very much correct that is, in the way they're talking about it, is that is a high priority value for them. But honestly, the usage that happens more is around external sharing. It's around security and compliance. And as Bo mentioned in the chat, it's around APIs that never existed. So they're giving and taking some. There's things that never occurred in the old Stream that we're going to get in the new Stream. And then the new Stream is going to have to catch back up with some of the playback functionality that existed. Now, to get started with it, and you can do this today, is Teams meeting recordings into SharePoint and OneDrive. So, John, I'm sure if we set up an R tenant here, but we can, depending on where this goes, this can go back into SharePoint and OneDrive, and we can externally share that content right after. So,
anyway, so part 2 then. The new app is, you said, PowerPoint creates presentations, Word creates documents, the new Stream creates videos?
Yep.
It's a video recording created, so instead of using Snagit to record video, I would use Stream.
You could. Yep, so you can use screen recording inside of Stream, right inside the web app.
Okay, that could be helpful. I'll reserve some judgment.
So what's kind of it got more onto it. So when this is kind of happening, so all of the main tooling is all going to be for next year. So then the Ignite announcements were around this is what's happening. But when you're looking at migration and the Stream web app, that's all coming next year. What's happening this year that you could start today is going to be moving your Teams recordings into SharePoint and OneDrive, and then that will allow you to search for meetings recordings, to share meetings recordings, and start to get, and there actually is going to be a default retention policy for that as well, to clean up those team meetings. So that is what is kind of core for Stream.
What happens if we just leave it and we ignore it and we just leave it there? Will Microsoft move those?
It's going to be forced at some point next year. It'll be forced at next year.
Okay, because I'll be honest, we're dealing with the whole workflow thing right now. This is, trust me, not on anybody's radar screen.
Where it will be is if people need the functionality for APIs and external access. So depends on the use cases.
Right.
On the SharePoint side, I'll highlight a couple, and then I'll jump into Cortex. So two of the big ones are around visibility into content. So, and the first one is around home site app. So what you're going to get is you can create home sites instead of SharePoint. That's not new, but the concept of bringing your intranet inside of Teams has been something that I've helped customers with and people ask about. And what is going to be available for us is that you'll have the option for the home site in Teams, which will allow you to deploy your intranet landing page basically directly inside of Teams to access it instead of just being like a page inside of a channel. So when you're thinking about your intranet, the thing to think about here is if you're in SharePoint Online, have you worked with home sites yet? And if you prepare a home site for you, when this becomes available, you'll be able to kind of like enable it and say, great, here's our intranet inside of Teams. Now, when you look inside of that, you actually saw a screenshot the screenshot before is what will be called the SharePoint app bar. So think of this as global navigation. It's something that we've always asked about. How do we get navigation across our apps, across SharePoint? The app bar will allow us to put information or see information across SharePoint sites. And this is an example of news. On this one, if I go back a page, actually, you'll see down on the bottom right here, you'll see quick access, company information, my sites, recommended news. All of that is kind of bringing SharePoint information, which will span across your SharePoint sites. Someone who's built multiple global navigation solutions, that one's a long time coming. Templates are one that are a little bit dear to me as someone who worked with a lot of templating projects. So there are going to be built-in templates. So you could always go out and create your own using site designs or P&P templating, or going back templating actions were always there, but we are going to have built-in templates that you can start with and don't have to deal with any development. So this one is going to be nice. I definitely think the new employee onboarding and the project management, from what I've seen, will be good ones for people to get started with. From an admin center side, if anyone's getting sick of going to the admin center and seeing not many reports, we are going to be getting customizable reports on our SharePoint landing page, our SharePoint admin center landing page, where we will actually be able to customize cards and see and pull different reports for SharePoint specifically. At the end of Jeff Teeper's keynote, he did throw the one more thing that came out is called Project Nucleus. This actually is in private preview now. what Project Nucleus is. It's as far as its first iteration, but the goal is to bring content offline. Like, just how do we make content faster? Realistically, how do we do that by also bringing content offline? So you're potentially using your computer processing versus using the server side processing. So what's starting with is going to be Microsoft Lists offline. So basically SharePoint lists. And the way this is going to work is that it's actually going to use the OneDrive sync app. So you're almost going to be able, you're going to basically be able to sync SharePoint lists onto your computer. You'll still be working in the web app, but it's going to be using the sync engine on your local device to manage offline access to SharePoint lists, which will also improve functionality. So if you're at bad Wi-Fi, if you're traveling, this is one that will be interesting to see grow, I'd say. I really like the vision of where it's going, like the thoughts behind it, but definitely want to see that take off the ground a little bit more. And I'm going to jump through this because they're not that good. I want to get to syntax because I have it on the roadmap. So from a roadmap perspective, again, I highlighted the big ones for me that are there. There's a lot of small tweaks around web parts, like the My Feed web part is now out. So there's a lot of small ones. I guess a bigger one is SharePoint. Bigger, it depends on GA, but SharePoint Spaces is GA. There was kind of in the bottom right section here where it says SharePoint News. There were some big announcements, or there's some main announcements around news to allow you to boost news and to get a curated news digest. That's going to actually be like AI built. So really, if you're working with news inside of your environment, or you have kind of home built news, pay attention to where news is moving in modern news, because they're enhancing that to really be a lot more flexible. When looking at specifically home sites, we are getting, right now you can do home sites today, you can build themes for home sites today. The home site app in Teams is planned for next year right now, but the app bar is this year. So if you're planning global navigation, or you're planning, as long as you're fully modern, look at and follow the SharePoint app bar and global navigation plan. And then if you're looking for kind of home site build, and if you want to bring into Teams, that's coming up next year.
Just to be clear, this is that home site, like intranet, corporate intranet type thing, not just the SharePoint and the waffle. What do we call that now? SharePoint Start?
Yeah.
I forget.
Correct.
Okay.
So SharePoint syntax went GA. And what this means, so the background in this is Microsoft released and announced Project Cortex earlier this year. And what Project Cortex is a general internal project. It's basically a team inside of Microsoft to build knowledge and insights for content. So it's inside the content services team. If anyone wants to stick, there's actually an office hours right after this with the Project Cortex team. If anyone wants to join that as well, that'll be talking. But Cortex was built to provide and start mining and uncovering knowledge inside of your tenant. And there's going to be, so it's going to have continuous iterations. That's why it doesn't necessarily have a name yet. The first thing that was released, though, which is a product which you can buy today, you can go out and trial today, is called SharePoint Syntax. And this is the first release from the Cortex team. And Syntax has 3 core principles of why it was released and what it does. First of all, you have content understanding, and which is the ability to take, let's say, receipts, or take pre-built types of forms. It's really forms understanding, where you can scan those, you can get those forms into a SharePoint library, run an AI model against it, and it will extract metadata for you directly in SharePoint. And then obviously, as we all know, for people working with SharePoint, once you have metadata, we can do plenty of things with it. But adding metadata and managing is not great. So if you've ever worked with any third-party products that have done like a scan capture concept, that's being brought into SharePoint. And that's more of the, I'd consider that AI. You then have what's called content processing or document processing, which let's say you have multiple statements of work or invoices. You're actually going to be able to capture that information and inside of the Word document say like, what type of document is this based on what the file is. And then I could extract metadata based on what that file is and move it into a different document library. Same concept, basically I upload a document into a library, it extracts metadata based on a model that we built. Now for both of those, we're going to be able to add compliance. So you're going to be able to add retention labels based on the information uploaded. Now, what I want to do is I'm actually just going to show it because I have it up here. So what I'm going to show is what's called document understanding. And this is what's called a content center. So the content center is a location when you enable syntax where I'm able to build models. I can build a model and the model is going to say what types of documents are these and what can I do with them. So you're going to have this concept where you add example files. I classify the files, which basically says what types of files are these. And then I create and train extractors. And the extractors are like, I want to pull a PO number out, or I want to pull a sound number out, or I want to pull some type of information out of a document. And then I'm going to apply that model to libraries. And what that means is when I upload a file into that library, this model is going to run. And this is like machine teaching, which will analyze those files and pull the metadata out. So in this example, I was working with some SOWs, and what I did is I created, you need to train the files to know what's a positive match and what's a negative match. So I created SOWs and what's called a benefits change file, and I said what files are SOWs. So you'll see right here I have a label that says negative or positive, and this tells me that I uploaded the files, it's going to analyze those files, and I'm going to say these files are the types of files that I want to identify. Once I have those, and then these files are just not matching, so I can upload any bogus files. When you train it, you basically build explanations of how I want to identify this file. So you'll see I actually added some phrases in here which say I want to look for the word statement of work. So if I see the word statement of work in the document, if I see the words sound number, I see sound number in here. And you basically build an explanation of these files, which will, when I train it, you'll basically say train model, and the more you get, the more accurate it'll be. It will match. And if it matches, it's saying, all right, this is the type of file that I want to extract metadata from. So this is a statement of work. I'm then able to test it to make sure that they do show. So you'll see here's all my negatives. Show all these HR benefits are negative. And then the magic part is around extractors. So an extractor here, you'll see none of these are being extracted from these benefits files. But if I go down into the SOW, the data I wanted to extract is the sound number. So you'll see I highlight the sound number here. And what this is going to do is I'm going to train this model to extract the sound number from files when they're uploaded. So I'm saying, here's an explanation which says, if I see the words this sound number, get what's after it, and it's going to pull it out. And it will tell me this all match. So you'll actually see as I'm building this model, it's all matching these files. It's matching the text in here, the label, is what they call it. And you'll see up on top, I have an accuracy of 100%. Now, I don't have this deployed to a library, but the concept would be, well, I guess I do. The concept would be I can then deploy this model. So I built this model, I can deploy it to a library. And then when I uploaded files into this, so I uploaded those sows into this library, you'll see it actually, I didn't do anything. It automatically extracted the sow number for these files when I uploaded them into this library. And it actually gave me a confidence score of how accurate they believe that they are, the classification date for it. And if you think about it with that, I can then apply any other business processes based on these files. And at its core, that's the document understanding side of Syntex. The other side, which I'm not going to demo today, is around forms processing. So very similar concept, but I would actually go into, let's say, so I was going to try to build a bunch of Chipotle receipts and extract information from Chipotle that I'm able to go into a library and it will say create model to process forms. So a big thing is think of like Word documents as one thing and like invoice PDF documents as another. Two different kind of ways to pull information out. One is really in documents, one's not. But both of them are, the goal is to pull metadata out of information that's uploaded into SharePoint using machine learning and document teaching. So
if I have a bunch of, I'll use the word invoices or whatever, that come in and get uploaded to a library, I could train it to read those and say, suck out the customer name, suck out the customer number, and have that as metadata for the documents?
Yep.
Oh, I like that. Can I have that, please?
Yeah, pay for it. It's all its own license right now. It's all its own.
Yeah, never mind. I'll never see it.
Is it per user, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So licensing, the way it looks is it's an add-in to everyone, and if you're using forms processing, it actually uses AI builder credits for it. I mean, it is, I think it's $5 a user a month.
Yeah,
for
that's
every
what I
user
thought
that would
too.
be consuming it. So the way it's kind of moving, we do have one customer right now, a large customer that we're working with on implementing it, and again, we worked with it in Robert Half. It has its use cases. It definitely has its price point use cases, but the vision for it of what's coming is going to actually be not just in the extraction of documents, but then once the documents are in there, there's a whole concept of topic management that's coming, which is that you're going to basically expand your taxonomy world to say the data extracted and the data analyzed for files inside of SharePoint and OneDrive. I'm going to extract topics, and those topics are going to start to appear inside of different pages and portals, and they're going to be automatically curated. So that's what's coming potentially by the end of this year, is the topic experience within inside of Syntex, where you're going to get a lot more. There's a lot more coming on that side, to be clear. But with Syntex today, you can go get the free trial right now, and definitely worth it to try it out. So that's what I have in that tenant. Chris, you have a question around what's the most common use case? Invoice APAR. Anytime you have mass scale of document ingestion. I was actually at a company that had two people that were dedicated. Their full-time jobs were scanners. All they did was scan files, and then people printed files out, and it was a terrible business process. But it's going to be hard to identify like kind of what business processes they are. So manufacturing is one that I've seen, or that's talked about. APAR is the big one. The one I tried, we worked within Robert Half, was actually around resumes. So Robert Half is 35,000 employees, and resumes like crazy. So our thought for this was, they probably have hundreds of thousands of resumes. What if we tried to curate all of those resumes into using document and forms ingestion into SharePoint, so we could start to build topics, and we don't have to deal with like what people's skill sets are. What if we automatically extracted all of that information from the resumes at scale, and then we had that all in kind of a database that the people in Robert Half could go out and identify skill sets. So I could just type in SharePoint and pull it all out. And the reason I kind of failed at Robert Half is it's just too big and getting ownership. The concept made sense, but they didn't want to buy it yet. So, and it was way too early from the preview. But
yeah, it's really interesting. I appreciate that. That's it's helpful just to kind of wrap one's mind around a little bit of the real world practicality of use cases. So I appreciate that.
So I only went like 20 minutes long, John. I thought I was going to go 40 minutes long.
Yeah, thanks. So
Better
that
than
was
normal.
Yeah, that was the end of Drew's 20 minutes we gave him. So I planned that ahead of time. So no, very good stuff. So what we are going to do, though, we're going to move along, save some more questions until the end so we can get through some other topics. And I'm going to kind of flip you, Matt, and Chris real quick. Chris may have to drop a little early, too. So Chris, if you want to jump in now, we'll jump into kind of some security things related to these areas. I gave Chris 5 minutes, so expect 15, 20 here. But I do what I can, guys. I do what I can. All right, Chris, take it away.
Sorry about that. Got to unmute and redrag my stuff. I don't know why Teams likes to do that. Whenever I have a presentation up like this and I switch the presenter view, it always gets squirrely on me. But here we are. So thanks for giving me some time to work with y'all. For those that had maybe seen me, I did a presentation on various elements of Azure AD and Intune and some other things, I don't know, 2-3 months ago maybe. So it's nice to be back with this user group. And John had asked me to compile some of the security and compliance related announcements that came out of Ignite that just, it's obviously not comprehensive, especially with only 5 or 10 minutes. It would be impossible to cover everything, but tried to come up with what I thought were relevant to that sort of SharePoint ecosystem. And you could make the argument that a couple of these maybe are a little bit downstream to an extreme sense, but still good information that I think would be worthwhile to at least have cognizance over, that may ultimately come across the plate of an individual in your positions and that sort of thing. Sentinels being one of them that, so much of the time it's lately becoming the center of the universe as a security tool and in the security teams within companies. But what we're seeing certainly, and I'd be curious to see if you guys are also seeing, is that it's having these sort of tentacles out into other administrative roles within the company, because at the end of the day, that whole seam and SOAR concept is to pull as many disparate elements of Microsoft and third-party platforms and tools and services, et cetera, all in through this single pane of glass, and then have, sort of that orchestration and that evaluation of all those things in a consolidated way. And one of the bigger changes that came out of Ignite that I thought was interesting, beyond just the name changing and the nomenclature differences, going from ATP now to this Microsoft Defender name convention for all those advanced security tools in E5, is this integration at a more cohesive level with Sentinel. And so basically what's happening now is with Sentinel as that SIEM SOAR aggregator, the Microsoft Defender tool set, so Microsoft Defender for Office 365, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Defender for Azure, Microsoft Defender for Identity, all the former ATPs. And for those of you in the SharePoint world, the most kind of near term or the closest of those that have probably come across your plate was what was Office 365 ATP, the attachments for Exchange Online, but that also extended out to SharePoint and OneDrive for Business, and could evaluate the data as it rested in those repositories and then decipher from the content if any of the links inside them had any sort of malicious qualities to them, or more comprehensively, if any of the data sitting there had any sort of malicious aspects to it from like a macro perspective, or that file itself had any unusual qualities that needed to be siphoned out, off or detonated or whatever. So that seamlessness that's being introduced in Sentinel is basically allowing all those data elements associated with the Microsoft Defender Suite to now flow more seamlessly into Sentinel and to work better in a comprehensive way to evaluate those against all the other data being collected against other third-party tools that you may be plugging into it. Now, one thing to keep in mind that's kind of useful for Sentinel is, yes, it's cloud native, but it's also a little bit nuanced in the way Microsoft charges for it. So it's not like the old days of SIEM and SOAR tools where it's this big fat appliance and you have to prepay for whatever you think sizing and spec is needed to be. It's pay by the drink like any other SaaS service. And because of that, Microsoft has created a little bit of a bifurcation where, yes, it's a pay by the drink kind of model for most things, but certain elements are free if they're M365 services. And Defender in subtle ways has parts of that. So it is quote unquote free to some degree if you're using it with some of these Defender components. And now this ingestion sort of efficiency that they're bringing in, that more sort of integrated experience with those, I'd like to think will drive some additional utilization and have companies kind of more comprehensively start looking at this SIEM SOAR functionality, especially in that kind of mid-market space, which, you know, a lot of companies are in that 500 to 5,000 employee range that maybe didn't have this kind of functionality in the past and have sprawling SharePoint environments still, or, you know, a lot of data being handled throughout OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams and all these other places. Now let's get a better handle on how to consolidate all the alerts and all the different things coming out of this. We have to navigate to like 4 different portals anymore. Let's just start with Sentinel, and now we can build automation about what the response can be and build these playbooks to make sure that as those things occur and as our users encounter malicious data of some kind, there are native ways within SharePoint and OneDrive that we can protect ourselves, obviously, but let's take it to the next level and make sure that we automate some of that response and make it, you know, as quick and efficient as possible. It's kind of this truism in the security world that, you know, all the tools in the world are great, but so often the limiting factor is human reactivity and sort of that human factor that still comes into play of, okay, the tool alerted to something, but when, you know, is the human going to give the tool permission to eradicate that threat or to take it and take some action against it? Well, if you start to develop these playbooks in Sentinel, you're trusting the AI to do some of that work for you so that that human time factor doesn't get as much of become as much of an issue as it would otherwise be. So that's kind of the long and short of that one. It's just that connection with those Microsoft Defender tools has become more holistic with Sentinel. So just kind of a heads up on that. One that's probably a little bit closer to home is on the compliance side. So there was a complete redesign essentially that's come to Compliance Manager. If anyone had been using the old version, you technically still can use it. They're calling it Compliance Manager Classic, I think. You know, and they had good qualities to it. I saw kind of a mixed bag of organizations that would leverage it. But with this new Compliance Manager revamp that they've done, it's kind of adopted that new score model that Microsoft seems to be doing with everything. You know, there's secure score and communication score and all that. And well, compliance score is yet another in that list of scoring dashboards. And then from there, you manifest different policies and evaluations. They've also, as part of this revamp, introduced a whole litany of new compliance standards that it's able to evaluate. The old model was kind of what it was. I mean, you had this, it started with maybe, I think it was 10 or 12 of them, and then they slowly over time were building them out, and you still had to do some manual attestation. Whereas now the new Compliance Manager is allowing for, as you can see, there are over 200 compliance standards. They've adjusted the pricing model somewhat. It's not like out of the box just by virtue of owning Compliance Manager, they own all 200. There's sort of these advanced packs that you can buy where you just add individual pieces. But there's a lot more of them to choose from. So chances are good nowadays, at least with the new Compliance Manager, that whatever your compliance standards are that you need to adhere to, there's a likelihood that exists. And then from that, then there's a lot more automation that's come to it so that it can now look out and detect those settings. It doesn't require that human attestation necessarily in the manual way that it once had. So now as you're applying policies and configurations in SharePoint and you're applying DLP against all the different stuff, if you're using more of the advanced tools like Azure Information Protection or even better, Microsoft Information Protection to do data governance and classification, this can read and decipher all those things and then automatically attribute that as part of your attestation and your compliance standards through Compliance Manager to say, yep, you're checking those boxes. And what I've always liked about the way Microsoft does Compliance Manager is it's comprehensive. So it does, if you're trying to align to multiple compliance standards, which most organizations, if they're going to have rigid compliance auditing, it's rarely just a single one. It's usually multiple. There's SOX, and then maybe if they're healthcare, also HIPAA. If they're manufacturing, there's often ISO 27001 and various others. It gets even crazier in the defense and federal and state and local government world. So it can now automatically look for those attributes and say, yes, you've checked all the boxes for all these compliance standards at once by virtue of this setting or this configuration or this aspect of this tool that's being used. So it's just a lot less work, ideally, in the long run now to live in this new compliance manager and not have to worry about all the people involved to manually execute and attest to all those things being done. So if you haven't considered it as part of your operations, or sometimes I've seen organizations using some other tool, or actually more often than not, it gets flipped around and maybe it lives on SharePoint and people just log in and somebody spends some time to build out a table in there where they can track everything. That manual aspect to it is significantly reduced in what is owned with Compliance Manager today. And with that revamp, I do think it's made it a lot more approachable for organizations to live by. And it, just like Secure Score as well, it's added those sort of top lists to say, oh, here's the biggest compliance risks associated with the standards that you've told me to watch for that you should address. And it helps you prioritize and that sort of thing. So I know our organization, a lot of the customers we've worked with have started to take a closer look at this as a result. In the pandemic sense, it's kind of led to an additional layer, from what we've seen anyway, of compliance concern. Now that all these employees are scattered to the wind, what we had been doing as an organization to adhere to our compliance when everyone was on the LAN and over VPN was sometimes practical, sometimes wasn't. Things were a little bit more controlled. And now that we're all scattered to the wind, it's not as simple, or we have to reimagine how we're going to make sure that we're maintaining our compliance in that way. And as a result, they've looked at this a lot closer to say, how will this help us be more efficient at that and essentially pivot faster without all the overhead. So that was kind of an interesting development. I thought that alongside this revamp that they're going to do a lot more automatic review of all your settings and make it a little bit less of a journey. Cloud App Security also got a big update. And so another one that I know is not a direct correlation to SharePoint, but with DLP, they've enabled the extension of the universal DLP policies that we often configure in our tenants to extend out through MCAS now to third-party repositories. Now, why is that important in the context of SharePoint? Well, we've all been there, I presume, where we tell our users to use SharePoint and OneDrive, and we're a team-centric organization, and so that's where all the data should be proffered and where people should be sharing data. Inevitably, Shadow IT rears its head, though, at some point, and you want to make sure that you're aware, at least, even if you're not going to physically stop it, although you can, that, hey, stop using Box, stop putting your data over here, stop using Dropbox or even WebEx and stuff and sharing files through that mechanism. So MCAS, obviously, as a cloud access security broker, can help reveal and then, if desired, with the right licensing, block some of those activities. But with this update coming out of Ignite around the universal DLP policy enforcement, now even just in a passive way, without having to go as deep on the MCAS conditional access development rules, we can essentially push our DLP universal settings out through MCAS to apply to all those third-party repositories at the same time. So that way, if users are, or when or if they start doing some of that shadow IT stuff, or even if you're an organization that does sanction these things and say, yeah, we are a Microsoft shop perhaps, but we also have our reasons for still using Box or Google Drive or something like that. Now you can at least have a universal application of DLP by virtue of what you've set in your Office 365 tenant through MCAS. And it doesn't mean that you have to go and figure out a different way to do that for these third-party repositories. So it's just efficiency, ensuring that sort of governance and security over how data is being accessed and shared and stuff is a little bit more universal. And it's not just something you can only have to worry about doing in the Microsoft cloud. It can now extend successfully out. So something now that it's sort of out there in public preview, we're seeing a lot of organizations ask us to help them start testing or at least prepare for, because it's sort of a no-brainer. I mean, even if there isn't an expectation that those things will ever be used, it's kind of a, break in case of glass kind of concept of, well, we don't necessarily think we'll need these, but in case somebody accidentally uses one or deliberately uses one or whatever, at least we've got some sort of protective layer there to avoid any either deliberate or in sort of inadvertent data leakage or anything like that. So that was one as well. And then one of the last ones I thought I'd call out is advanced eDiscovery. So for those that have E5 or that have worked in the E5 realm of M365 or even Office 365, eDiscovery is obviously a very powerful engine that helps us do our legal holds, as well as a bunch of custodial reviews of data across the tenant to make sure that if we have any sort of legal challenges that we're trying to overcome, or just need to do any comprehensive reviews of personnel or the data that's being shared across the organization, that we have that ability through that engine to surface that stuff and then put it into a nice report to sometimes give to an auditor or to a legal proceeding, that sort of thing. So with advanced eDiscovery, obviously it's got some additional enhancements to it that allow for a little bit more granularity in how those searches can occur. And one of the new things that came out at Ignite was to kind of plug the gap that existed in the Teams world, which was all the chats alongside all the files inside of channels where those chats are occurring that might be shared, and the ability for eDiscovery to evaluate those and then bring context to when those files are discovered alongside, I should say, those chats. And so it was kind of this challenge in the past when we would run advanced eDiscovery queries that it would find some of those files, but it wouldn't necessarily be obvious because it wasn't tied to a specific user. It was as part of a team, somebody had uploaded that file to that SharePoint repository, that it was a little bit clunky as a custodian to figure that out and do the research to figure out, okay, why was this file being interacted with this person at this time and that sort of thing. And so now it does these kind of live document and link evaluations and analysis as part of your queries, so that it puts context to it. It says this file was accessed in this channel, or it was stored in this channel and interacted with by these people in the context of this chat. And so it just adds additional granularity and sort of efficiency to those advanced eDiscovery queries, and really just makes it so that if you're doing any comprehensive evaluation or analysis of that information, you're not having to expend additional human efforts to figure that out, or have to, kind of spend some extra cycles going to look all that up. And so that referenceability for those things in the context of how they were being proffered. For those that do that type of thing, especially your legal teams, they will be thankful that that's an enhancement that's there now. It could be kind of a time sink, and especially when we've seen lawyers get involved through a subpoena process or through a discovery process in a legal proceeding, when a lawyer's charging $500, $600, $700 an hour to do some of this work to evaluate different data elements associated with eDiscovery queries, it's handy to say, no, we don't need you to spend 5 extra hours researching that. Here, it's already contextualized and everything is nicely categorized in the way that it was originally kind of in situ proffered. So just a quick and easy thing. John only gave me 10 minutes, so I had to kind of consolidate and condense it. But hopefully that's helpful, just as on the periphery, some of the security related stuff that came about.
Good job, Chris. You stayed close. I think it was only 15, so good.
Right on.
So, all right. Well, thanks again. We'll hang off to the end for questions as well if people have them. Good stuff. What we like to always kind of blend in the security side of things because it's important. So, with that, Matt, if you wanted to jump into Teams. And then Matt and Anthony are left. We got Teams and Power Platform. We'll do our best to have a little bit of time at the end for Ask Anything, but since we have 2 big topics left, well, who knows? But Matt, go ahead, jump on in.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, great updates. I think all the security and compliance, those are huge, especially for FinServ and those type of groups. So excited to see those updates. All right, everyone see that okay?
Sure can.
Awesome. Okay, well, my name is Matt Engevus. I'm a technical account manager and digital workplace leader at Concurrency. So happy to be here today, and my portion is going to be on Teams, and I promise not to go as long as Drew. So kind of just a quick, I thought this was really important just to kind of show a couple of key things. If you missed these, the book of news from Ignite has all the updates across all of the different areas, Azure to Teams to OneDrive and SharePoint. Great interactive site that you can go to and see all of the updates. And then this news on demand. So you can go to just, My Ignite, you can look for all of the sessions, but the on demand, this video landing page has like 8 of the top kind of areas from the key speakers and some really good videos from Ignite. And I thought one of the, kind of the one underline, if you were going to get a t-shirt from Ignite, it would probably say something around the, what Satya had shared in that keynote is, we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months, with COVID and how we've all gone from, remote workers to smart restart. So this has been incredible. Obviously, Teams has been one of those key focus areas. Even what we're seeing with customers looking at doing more with Teams, moving, leveraging more voice with Teams. So really exciting time. I'm sure all of us probably have had some kind of experience with Teams. And if you haven't, well, you're on this meeting today, so here you go. But yeah, just really exciting to see everything that was coming and is being done. The other thing, we're seeing now, like Microsoft is cool. Microsoft Teams is cool, right? It's innovative, it's adaptive, it's built for how teams want to work. I think we saw, kind of our first insight was with the NFL draft was brought together by the Together mode. John showed that in the beginning. And then NBA games too. You saw the Together mode from the court side, which was a little bit weird and piping in, crowd noise and stuff like that. But regardless, pretty cool that Microsoft was leading the charge with the NBA and the NFL draft to do that Together mode. Teams usage increased, so this was really incredible. And obviously, with all of us going remotely, but this 70% increase to 75 million daily active users that was announced in April, and then up to 115 million from, announced in October here. So huge increase in user adoption. I know Zoom had kind of announced and then restructured what they announced on their usage, because they were touting 300 million, but that was actually people that are in meetings. So I think here, obviously there's a ton of momentum around Teams, and hopefully all of you are getting a chance to use this in your local companies and organizations. So some of the Teams announcements. So the new Together mode, that was something that we showed with, where we can have we can have more of that classroom. So there's some new modes that are coming out where we can be more like in a board meeting, just a way to be more interactive and provide some different scenes. Kind of cool. Some of the custom layouts. This is probably one of my favorites, in that I can show a presentation and then I can actually be in front of. So there's some different layouts that I can do. Be in the lower right corner there and actually see the presenter and the presentation at the same time. So that's pretty cool. Breakout rooms. So the breakout rooms, this I think is going to be really interesting to see. If some of the education, they start to take advantage of this, as this is definitely where Zoom has those breakout rooms, and I know my kids are using this with school, where you can have a big group, you can split off into smaller breakout sessions, and then the organizer can bring folks back together. The organizer can hop into different breakout rooms and see how things are going. So I think this was definitely nice feature to see added. The other one is the meeting recap. So this is all with meetings, but this meeting recap, how many times do we walk out of a meeting and we're like, where is that deck? Where are the information? Who was all in that meeting? And we're trying to hunt through either Teams. But now you can see this in Teams, this meeting recap, as well as in your Outlook calendar. You'll see a recap of so the recording, the transcript, all of those things. So some of the meeting room experiences here, just kind of highlighting a couple of the points. Nothing here really to show, but just that being more conscious of touchless meeting experiences. So having the ability to do like proximity joins or Cortana voice assistant. So joining a meeting, not having to actually touch. So some pretty cool enhancements there. And then call queuing. So call queues, collaborative calling. So this is, this would be great for IT support teams where we need to do call queues and be able to jump on and help folks out. So that was announced. And then some of the chat and collaboration. So there was a number of things here, and I had to kind of scale back. I've got a few more on the next slide here, but the chat collaboration, the team templates. So you're seeing a couple of those here, but there's 9 templates. So this gives you the ability to create a team and actually start with a set of employee. You can have a set of common actions and things that you would do when you're onboarding, or if you're organizing an event. Having that list and those type of things. So that's pretty cool. New search results experience. So this is pretty neat. Just seeing that that whole search experience, it definitely needed some updates there. It works, but it was kind of basic. So there's some new, making messages, people, make it easier. They're also plugging this in and using AI. So you're more connected with the people and content that you're actively engaged in. So I think this will be a nice addition, and excited to see. All right, and then the list. I know that this was announced a little bit earlier, but I thought just the Microsoft Teams app in Teams. This was a pretty big thing that was reminded about at Ignite, and just this whole app to be able to specifically focus on lists. If you're like me, I love lists. I love staying organized with lists. I love to do. And just having those lists that we can all collaborate on. But this list to life, the mobile app is coming out, still targeted to come out later this year, if I'm not mistaken. But this really just gives us that ability. So it's its own app in O365. But then you'll also see these templates, again, kind of similar to that employee onboarding, where you see a specific list template that you can use for collecting either onboarding events, those type of things. So gives you a really nice interactive way to make lists come alive, as opposed to some of the traditional lists that we've had that experience with in SharePoint.
But the best part about lists, are you going to tell them about the best part? The best part?
What's the best part?
The best part is that if you go to the Lists app through your browser, you can create a personal list. So if you're someone like me who despises Excel and prefers to work in SharePoint lists because of all of these things, you can create a personal one that is stored in your OneDrive. You no longer have to have like a spare SharePoint site set aside so that you can have your own SharePoint lists. You can do it all by that's the best part.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Rachel, for bringing that up. And then just the customizable views. So you can create rules, notifications, all of those things. So really, making these lists, if you will, smart lists, right, that are more intuitive and, again, give you reminders and rules baked in. So I know maybe we do a follow-up in the future on that because there's a lot more, but I felt like I had to get that plug in there. And then some of the M365 integration. So insights from My Analytics and Workplace Analytics. So the My Analytics, like that email you get in Outlook saying, where you're collaborating, who you're collaborating with. Some of those smart things are adding to-dos or asking you if you followed up on something. So those kind of insights coming into Teams is going to be really cool. And then the SharePoint home site. So this was one that I know I was excited to see. Just this, again, another way to bring your intranet, all that hard work that a lot of the folks probably on this call have been part of, deploying your intranet or your digital workplace, and now bringing that into Teams in a nice interactive way. So this, to me, this was really cool. I was excited to see, this SharePoint home site available here in Teams.
Yeah, I'm really pumped for this one.
Right on. And then some of the security and compliance, I was glad Chris kind of jumped into this because I going before him, I didn't know if I'd steal some of that thunder, but this is definitely some big strides, especially with like FinServ and some of the more regulated industries where they needed to have more ability to provide like data loss prevention on team chats. So Chris obviously went into that in good detail, but I thought those are really two big announcements. And then the graph API for Teams export. So being able to actually do some enterprise archiving and archive off messages. So this, we actually have a FinServ customer that is talking with us today, or talking with us now about doing this with Teams and messaging archive. So, especially if you need to do eDiscovery, classification, those type of things, retention, you've got to have a way to be able to do that export. So this was a big announcement. And then Teams as a platform. And so I won't go into too much detail here, but obviously a lot of the stories that you were hearing from a lot of the videos and things like that were, leveraging Teams as a platform. So, Teams plus the Power Platform is definitely that better together story. So things like Power Apps and virtual agents, having those things, those apps, you can just, right from the ellipses on the left side, you can add these different apps right into Teams. And in a way, we almost could just live inside of Teams. So Power Virtual Agents and bots, and this is still a little bit newer, but really cool to be able to provide those chat and bot integrations right into Teams and take actions.
I get a lot of questions from my users about, when you go to the ellipsis there and all those various apps that they can add and everything else. I'll be honest, I don't know a lot about them, so I have advised caution, just like when installing an app on your phone. Do you know who the publisher is? Do you know what they're doing with your data? Use caution. Is there a better answer? Can someone explain that or help me, or what should I be telling them?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and definitely a compliance and education one. Obviously there's a process to be able to be an app in there, from Microsoft. I don't know. Anybody else from the panel have ideas on that?
Yeah, I would just jump in. Just at a high level, you can govern that and control that at a tenant level. So I do think someone at your organization has to think that through, what you want to allow, what you don't want to allow. Each app uses a trust model, so when you authorize it, when someone authorizes it, you can see what it's trying to get access to, your profile, to know your name or anything like that. So yeah, higher level, you should have kind of a governance decisions around that to understand, because it can throw some data back and forth between web services outside of Microsoft.
Yeah, so should is a good answer, and we won't go into internal work at where we are, so in IT. So I have no idea let's put it this way, I have no idea if that's happening for the ones that are enabled by default or whatever. So I will continue with you should use caution. if you don't know this, don't install it. Or at least be careful what information you put in that thing. Because who knows where they're storing that. I mean, because who knows where they're storing that data or how much of it's being copied to some other network. I mean, exfiltrated or what, I don't know.
Right, and that's a lot of times it goes through a security team to vet that out, and they can run, different modules to understand where that data is going and how it's being used. It typically goes through the security department to better understand,
Right.
on an app basis. But yeah, like you're saying, like that's a team effort, not a one-person job.
Yeah, and Rachel too, like if this is an app that you are already using, like Jira or one of those in your organization, then you've kind of already, that's already gone through its due diligence, right, with the team. So
Right.
then go look in and see if there's an app and connect away and yeah, bring that to Teams if that makes sense. But
I
yeah,
had somebody wanted to install some app where they could, like, I don't know, they get a reminder or a notification about a team channel post. I don't know, it was some obscure thing, and I was just like, man, write a flow.
Yeah.
Email it, but copy a link to the post, put it in your Outlook,
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure if there was any kind of, overall, yes, before Microsoft allows it to be listed as an app, they make sure that XYZ and the following is true. And so you can be confident of those characteristics. Beyond that, check with security or something like that.
There's
Yeah,
definitely a vetting process to get it into
Yeah.
AppSource.
Yeah.
We're looking at, I mean, we've gone down that route. It's not an easy thing to get into AppSource, so it's not like I can just go create Drew's app and publish it that will like exfiltrate data. So that's fine, but there definitely is aspects of it, like depending on the permissions that the application will require. It does require a vetting process because some apps might ask for read access to specific functionality if it's built into their own app. It's so dependent on what they have, but the higher question is there's definitely a process to get it into AppSource, and not just anyone can do it.
Right. Think of like the
So,
Microsoft Store or the Apple Store. Same kind of deal where they vet it out and make sure that it's compliant.
So for the apps that are in there and are enabled, fine, go ahead. Please be conscious of the security of the data that you're putting in there. So don't put in like, super secret-y stuff, right? Be smart.
Right.
For stuff that's in there that's enabled. If there's an app you want that's not enabled, I need to find out who they need to talk to with security or whatever about getting that approved.
Well, if
That
it helps,
happens
there's
right.
settings in Teams on the back end that you can apply as an admin that basically only expose to them the just sanctioned applications within Teams that you want them to have the ability to install or to add to channels. And then in addition, you can now, as I forget when it came out, I think it was sometime in the last year, the ability for the admins to control the subscription licenses associated with those third-party applications within Teams. So there are more granular options to.
Yeah, I don't know how anybody is watching that. I don't know how closely anybody's watching that.
Yeah, good points. I guess I wouldn't, Rich, I just wouldn't, scare people into thinking things in Teams are not secure, because it is still all,
Well, that's what I was worried about, because I didn't want to, I want people to be smart, but I don't want to scare them if there's no need for it.
Right.
So.
Yeah, but yeah, good points and good things to be thinking about. And a lot of people didn't even, don't even realize that app's option is there. So
I will revise my messaging then.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. I mean, that is, again, the core of this message is that, Teams as a platform. And so use it as a platform and use it as that place to bring in as many experiences as it makes sense. And it can be by team. It can be, and it's going to be different, right? What sales and engineering and marketing do is all different. So that's the beauty of it. So flows here, really neat way to be able to see all of your flows, your workflows, right inside of Teams. I'm just showing a little dashboard of what I see from Flow or Power Automate. And then updated Power BI. So this has gotten a nice update as well, being able to see like all of my dashboards and my reports, all of those things. Again, not having to go out to a different portal. I can bounce between my Power Apps, which may have a Power BI dashboard for me to be able to go and see. So yeah, I will leave more of the Power Platform updates and stuff to Anthony.
Awesome.
All
Thank
right,
you, Matt.
thank you, everyone.
I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. I'm going to guess that you guys can see.
Yep.
Awesome. So you guys seeing the trend yet? So 2020, you know, it's the year of Teams. It's Teams as a platform, as Matt was saying. So that's a perfect segue into the Power Platform. So the integrations that they've built for Teams and Power Platform is through the roof. And you know how Drew was talking about SharePoint and there's all these other things that are going on and with security and compliance, like there are just so many things. But as you guys can see, you know, the trend here is certainly going to be around Teams and how do we, you know, best drive that as Teams is a platform and your one-stop shop. So let's dive into Power Apps. So first we're gonna jump through Power Apps, then we'll jump through the other three components in the Power Platform. So a little bit to piggyback off of what Matt was saying a little bit is that you're able to build Power Apps in Microsoft Teams now. So that's something that came out a little bit before Ignite, but certainly they're driving that as a huge vehicle in you know, Ignite this year. So really exciting to see. You're able to, you know, go in there, build an app right in Teams, and it gives you pretty much the same display as you would get in the browser. It's a little bit different of an editor. You're not necessarily handicapped, but there's different ways of interacting with you know, with your Power App there. But building it in Teams, living in Teams, authoring it in Teams, and then, you know, down the road modifying it with Teams. But yeah, all great things. Also, you're able to use some of the Teams app templates. So you're going to be able to see that here. Let's pop that up. You're able to add, they have 3 right now, there's not a ton, but they're certainly just like the other app stores. And, you know, as we saw with Microsoft Lists, there's a ton of information that's being shared there. And it's really exciting to see that they're coming up with these templates that you can actually use. And I've actually built them for customers where they give you a starting place. It's not something that it's not a destination that they're giving you and it's all wrapped up and done. But it's certainly a spot where you're able to start with a lot of and see what Microsoft is and how they're building apps too. So I think it's exciting. You're able to utilize the simplified version of CDS within Teams. So basically what that means is within Teams, now you're going to be able to pull CDS through Microsoft Teams, and that's going to be the free version of CDS. It's again, it's another way of being able to interact with these different apps, and that's in Teams. But this is going to be a little bit more of a you know, a handicap version of CDS. It's not necessarily all of the suite's capabilities. So you're able to only share with the people that are within that specific team. So it's not an organizational wide type of deal. You can do certain things, but you wouldn't be doing yourself a favor if you're building all of your apps within this new system. So you can kind of see here that they're building the app within the Microsoft Teams version of what was called CDS. Also, there's new Azure API management tools, basically just saying you're able to you know, go out to Azure and you're able to upload your custom connectors and you know, manage those in one central area. So if you imagine, you know, you have some on-prem data that's being accessed by multiple apps, then you can just have your IT manage that for you so that they give access. There's better security on that. And just overall, it's just advanced settings that you can take advantage of when it's in Azure versus, you know, creating a custom connector that's built into a specific environment. So taking care of that in Azure certainly helps. I have a couple grayed out ones here. I'm just going to cruise over a few things. I just want to make sure that we have some time at the end. GitHub integration, that was huge. That was announced during 2020 Ignite, but it's still in preview. There's a lot of things that need to be worked out yet, and it's great for what it is, but there's a lot to be added. But the first step is always a big step. So seeing that has been great. Also, it's really big for the people that aren't even using GitHub, because they've integrated a lot of that GitHub integrations and security and credentials, things like that. They've wrapped a lot of those up inside of the Power Platform that you don't necessarily need to take advantage of GitHub to take advantage of those new features. So when I was deploying an upgraded version of this app, I was able to do that within 10 minutes. I had scheduled 4 hours for it, because typically going in there and reconnecting things and doing, what I need to do takes a little bit of time, but I actually got it done in about 10 minutes. So they are certainly saving us a ton of time, by putting that out there. And that actually has to do with all of the Power Platform suite applications that this integration works with. So moving on to Power Automate. So Power Automate Desktop. So I'm sure you guys have heard about UI flows, RPA. The big thing that they had announced, but it was kind of released before Ignite, was Softomotive. They purchased a company, and with that, while they were acquiring it, they didn't really change much just yet. It was a company that already had established basically a really well way of doing this, but now they've integrated it with Power Automate. So bringing in UI flows, integrating that with your desktop activities. This is going to be part of that attended RPA versus unattended. To kind of take a step back there, unattended is going to be where it's on a schedule, or there's something else that kicks off, an automated scheduled task that would, be really quick and automate. However, this is the attended version where you would go in and then you click, say, yes, go and take care of, a specific step-by-step process, really quickly by recording your actions, and then it would implement that for you. I guess the great thing about that is if you're importing a bunch of things, let's say to a government website, typically those are a little bit older school, where it's a lot of manual process. And if you can do that, it's in an Excel spreadsheet, and you just need to go through that process really quickly. This can do that as fast as that website can handle it. So that's a great aspect that's now being handled through Softomotive. Send an approval with Microsoft Teams chat. So this is really exciting. We're able to actually integrate Power Automate and Microsoft Teams, and they feel like they're the same thing. It doesn't feel like you're working with a different tool. It feels like it's Microsoft Teams, and it's really driving all of that through those types of adaptive cards and things. So you can see that there where it just popped up. You're able to approve, view details, see the actual file. So some exciting stuff that's going on there. You're also able to receive the approvals through Teams. So that's another exciting piece where, again, you can just you get that in a Teams message, and you can reply right in Teams. You don't have to leave the Teams atmosphere to be able to approve something that would be going through Power Automate. So then the Power Automate app, Matt was able to show a little bit of that earlier. The most exciting thing about that, I think, is just being able to see all your approvals in one spot. You can do that out, on the web, but bringing that into Teams, again, is just very important, especially for, the people that have a lot of approvals, maybe something's pending and they're a part of an important process. This is going to be where they're going to be able to go back and then see all of their approvals. They also have a timeline view that Matt showed. That's also really exciting that you're able to see those types of things. Just in a very clear and concise way within Microsoft Teams. Also, getting signatures, that was a huge one for us, that being able to use something like Adobe Sign, get approval from somebody. They go through that process to approve that their signature has been signed on this document or on this specific approval. Being able to go through that is I think within Teams is really going to change the way that how fast we can get those turned around. All right, and then there's the approvals here. This is going to be the Microsoft approvals app there. So Power Virtual Agents. So let's dive into that. There wasn't enormous updates, but there was one really fancy update, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Power Virtual Agents, and the Azure Bot Framework, they're one and the same, but Power Virtual Agents is going to be that democratized. What you see is what you get. You go in there, you click, you create topics. It's very low code, no code. Then there's the Azure Bot Framework where you can customize anything you want pretty much to make, one of these Power Virtual Agents, but it's the coding version of it. So now we're seeing more of that integration where they can work with each other instead of being completely separate. So being a pretty large announcement there. Public preview, and that's again going to be where the deep integration between Power Virtual Agents and Microsoft Teams. That's part of that to me is huge. You're able to go out there and build these Power Virtual Agents that are going to live in Microsoft Teams, and it stores the data within Teams. You're able to interact with it on Teams. You're able to send it to people, and they're able to interact with it on Teams. It's just, again, it's that Teams as an atmosphere. It's Teams as a platform, and you're seeing that driven through all of the Power Platform products. So a few more things to dive into there. Embedded authoring experience. You can see in this image here, you'll see it's a GIF here. Let's see if it'll keep moving for us. But you're able to see that basically you can interact with that bot. You're able to click answers. You're able to write back, exactly what you're looking for there, and then it'll find the topic and push you in the right direction to give you the right answer. On the back end, there's analytics so that whoever is managing that app, you can then see how people are asking questions, maybe modify a topic and how they get there, things like that to make it a better experience. Topic modifications, again, that's the same thing where we're just making sure that when they're typing something in that they're getting to the right topic or not the wrong one, or they're getting there as fast as possible. So just being conscious of that and having the visibility of that is most important. But then again, publishing your Teams app to the store, so you can build your app and then publish it and then allow people to download it, or you can put it on the left nav there that you see within Teams, that purple left nav. You're able to take advantage of that. So it's some exciting stuff within the Power Virtual Agents. You can see what's happening here. They're kind of working through building an app. You can see the different topics and how they would get there, and how easy it is with that low code, no code, and giving responses. You can kind of see some of that, the way that looks with the different conditions. It's pretty straightforward. You type in there and it gives you the option to make something maybe a little bit more code savvy or to kind of stay out of that, but certainly giving us options here where you're able to see ways that they can get to this specific topic, and then what answer they would get with that. So now I think my favorite piece here, stores the data within Teams, but everything that we just talked about is absolutely free if you're storing everything within Teams. That's the biggest update, I think, with Power Virtual Agents, is that you're able to build these bots. Somebody that is in HR, somebody that's in security, somebody that's in wherever they are, they can go in and build this pretty much for free, and it is for free, and take advantage of this. And I think that building an app that can answer their questions and really walk them through something like this is mind-blowing, that it's free. And again, you're taking advantage of this only within Teams, only the people that have access to that app internally. That's probably the only caveat there, that it's not going to be externally facing, so you can give that to a customer for free.
Anthony, have you done any of those for customers yet?
When it comes to the internal, not really, because CDS, Dataverse, Project Oakdale, whatever we call it these days, it was not out of preview, so I didn't feel comfortable putting that out there. Now that this has become more stable, I can see this building really, really fast. I think it's going to be more of a coaching and training session than it would be anything else, given how easily you can build these types of things. There's definitely going to be some best practices you want to build into it, and govern those types of things. But outside of that, I think this is going to be democratized, to the fullest, compared to maybe like a Power App where there are low code, no code solutions, but you typically dive into the code with those types of things. So Power BI and Ignite updates. we'll kind of cruise through a couple of these real quick. Teams and Power BI, of course, everything starting with Teams. Teams is the center of the universe. Like Matt mentioned, there is an app out there. You're able to do pretty much everything that you would do out on the web now within Power BI, or I'm sorry, within Teams as Power BI. New search experience, I think this is huge. You know, you're able to go out there and then at Power BI and bring that experience of searching for different reports and you know, information right in Microsoft Teams and be able to filter that down. So you're looking for very specific things and you're able to pull those back, you know, based on that. Data set discovery, so you can click out there, find exactly, there's an inside the app, you're going to be able to find all the data sets that you're able to attach, you know, a report to. So you can start building in Teams. You can then find data sets that you want to connect to in Teams. It's just bringing that stuff up, elevating it so that you're able to see what you're able to connect to. And then on top of that, there's so many more updates with Power BI. I think, you know, Power BI got a lot of love this year, but moving on, AI infused anomaly detection. So if there's something that's going on in your report, it'll let you know, saying, hey, there's, you know, it's showing a trend, but, you know, there's an anomaly. So it basically just brings that out to your attention, and then also defines what that anomaly is to Power BI and what they see as an issue. But Power BI premium per user capacity scale option for premium. That's again more of the licensing stuff. I won't dive into that now, but giving more options to clients so that they're not stuck into a specific you know, way of doing things. And this is that's a really big deal this year. Sensitivity labels, again, this can be automatic or this can be applied manually, but very important from a security standpoint that we're able to apply those. Data source impact analysis. So building an you know, a Power BI report that's out there, connecting it to a data source. Now let's say we have, you know, 10 or 15 of those. If you know, do this data source impact analysis, let's say that you were to take down your on-prem gateway or whatever it is, and it's connecting to a specific data source, and you can now do an impact analysis to understand what are the reports and the different type of dashboards that are built that are going to be affected when I take this down. Is everybody off of this and not using this anymore? Whatever the case is, you're able to do that analysis up front. And then Power BI for HoloLens. Awesome, of course. We'll see kind of, you know, how quickly this takes off. It's kind of like, you know, SharePoint Spaces, where, you know, there's virtual versions of all these things. I am very excited, and I hope that it becomes more of a real life thing sooner than later. But for the time being, certainly something to look forward to. And then a quick bonus round. There's, you know, we've been, you know, in 2020, there's been so many updates since Ignite. Ignite was back in September, late September, and I just wanted to quickly talk about a few things. So a few updates I didn't mention yet in the discussion here was DataFlex was the initial name for CDS within Teams, then Project Oakdale. That was the interim name as they kind of figured themselves out. Now they're on to Dataverse. We'll see if that sticks around and, you know, how long that sticks around. So really exciting to see that they've now made that generally available. And that's, you know, I think that to me is with Power Virtual Agents using that as a backend, you know, Power Apps using that as a backend, you know, Power Automate storing flows in there as a backend. So there's a lot of things that are happening with Dataverse, and I look forward to that becoming, you know, more, I guess, available. It's great where it is, but there's certainly a lot more to come. New DLP policy changes. We talked a little bit about those earlier, but this is more on the Power Platform side. You're able to block more connectors. Before you were only able to block a very specific number of connectors. Now you're able to block all but I think 4 connectors at this point. So it's kind of exciting. They didn't really let you block Office 365 connectors before. Now they're allowing you to block a few of those. So I think just for the larger organizations where it's very specific on what people can do, and there's a large, you know, governance at play, that's where that really comes in handy. COE, I know that I haven't mentioned this yet, but the Center of Excellence. So in the Power Platform, there's a community-driven Center of Excellence, and there's some huge updates, major updates for that. Basically, that there's UI flows that are included. There's Dataverse coverage for that, and they completely revamped all the reports. And then they're going to have you know, more of the Power Virtual Agents that are in there. I don't know why that's not in my notes here, but that's also covered. Responsive Power Apps containers, that was released this week. Really exciting. So it's not perfect yet, but it's a huge step in the right direction so that we don't have to build a mobile app and a desktop app, or when you are deploying an app, you have to kind of determine what the screen resolution is, for everybody, or have a generic one, and then it'll fit better for some and not better for others. This is going to be a way that we can kind of predict a little bit more of that, and it will be a little bit more responsive. So they basically gave us two containers, that's vertical and horizontal. Deeper virtual bot composer framework integration. Dynamics 2016 mail merge deprecated. So that was a big piece this year. I think seeing that go away. AI builder models, you can see on the bottom right here with the screenshots. There's some that you have to train, some that you get out of the box, but certainly a lot more than last year. Power Apps, you can now use offline mode, and that's pretty much it, I guess, for these additional updates that have happened since the end of the year. Some of those are maybe a little bit before, but they're coming out of preview. So, and then I have a references slide here. So that's it for the Power Platform updates. Hopefully I didn't take too long. That was really exciting to be able to bring that to you guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Please stick around.
Great job, Anthony. I appreciated the speed as it sped up as we went. It was great.
Yeah.
But thanks for respecting our time and everyone. So again, this took a good chunk of time to get through all the updates, but there, as you can see, there's a lot going on everywhere inside of the Microsoft ecosystem. So I think it's great. And a lot of good things coming or released this week, things like that. So all right, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So we'll do what we can on Ask Anything. I think from the chat there was a couple things going on. I think there's two, from what I can see, unanswered type of questions in there. So I'm going to start there if we want to. There's a question out here about how companies are, kind of administering all of these things. So now, a lot of us come from SharePoint backgrounds, and we were SharePoint admins, but now you got Teams and Teams admins and all these apps and administration. And how do you integrate that? How do you govern that with business processes? Unless someone wants to correct me with kind of what that question is, I'll let people jump in. I mean, I'll just start, I guess, with one quick one. I do see a lot of overlap between Teams and SharePoint admins really going together, and coming from two different worlds. A lot of the Teams admins are coming from an Exchange online or Exchange admin world, and SharePoint admins are coming kind of from our typical world from this group and such. But from that, what are other people seeing? And we'll cap this to about 2-3 minutes here if we can. There's a second question out there as well.
So what I was asking is that I'm a SharePoint admin, and we do have a Teams admin in our company. So like, how do we, since we have all these apps which have their own admins, and when they integrate with each other, like who decides to do what, and how do we manage, and like how do we administer, like where do we draw the line, like this is where you support this and this is where like I come in, and how do you like differentiate that? Because right now everything is integrated with Teams, and we do have like a separate Teams admin. So is Teams admin is like responsibility to support all these apps, or it's like, how do you it's getting really hard to draw that line between admins on how to manage these apps.
Yeah, I personally would say when it comes down to defining the products, figuring out exactly which ones are being used currently, and understanding more of an inventory, and those are the ones that you're probably going to want to lock down a little bit sooner than later. Just not lock down, but you're going to want to keep an eye on, and then probably have some type of product owner on those to help you drive that type of thing. It doesn't necessarily need to be all on IT's shoulders. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I've gotten all of this year and probably the end of last year, is that this is no longer an IT driven everything. This is more of an IT partnership with the business, partnership with product owners, and delegating, because there's no way that you could have a team that would be big enough for all of these separate products, and then be able to manage these all separately or all under IT. It has to be a partnership, certainly.
Yeah, I think too, just, teams kind of flipped us that are used to managing our SharePoint worlds, kind of flipped our script a little bit. And now we really did have to work across team lines with the Exchange and the email groups. And so, I mean, I think we need to continue to do that. If you own content or that's your responsibility, don't assume somebody else is doing it just because it's in a different, you still own that content, and the users still own their content. Just like they share their files, their content in OneDrive, you still are responsible as team owners. So, that ownership shouldn't just be on one individual, but there needs to be, that collective governance committee really still be part of that.
All right. So again, in the interest of time, we'll kind of move forward as well. There's another one out here. So I think, David, you had a question here. Are there places to have Teams usage scenario discussions kind of deeper than meetings? So is that kind of like a reporting and analysis? Is that the question? David's still on?
Yeah, I was kind of curious on that one too, John.
I believe he's asking on, how do we use these apps, and, what are the scenarios that, other than having meetings such as this, what is the usage of Teams with outside of the meetings?
So from the user group side, or just in general business scenarios? I'll jump in. I'll jump in and just kind of randomly speak. But as Anthony was saying a ton as well, with Teams as the ecosystem, the environment, the atmosphere, where you live, right? That's kind of the thought process I have in my mind when I work with people as well. Think of it as the new desktop, right? Instead of working in Windows, you're working in Teams, and think about how those scenarios can work. And they're all going to be different, right? You're going to have meetings, but you're going to have advanced types of meetings. If you're in healthcare, they're using it for virtual patient visits into rooms using Teams meetings or not. You could have, collaboration between organizations happening in a meeting or in an extranet level type of Teams collaboration. You're now going to have more apps inside of Teams where you're storing data and tracking a list of this, that, or the other thing and automating that. It's going to be in the middle of everything. It's the same problem we have. We talked administration, we just talked Teams. We have the same problem naming this user group, because it's been the SharePoint user group for a while, but it really is more than that. So it's that evolution, we need to make as a group, and our roles and organizations to make. So I went randomly, but I think that way. I think you got to think Teams is the center of everything, and you'll be in a good spot. All right. Other follow-ups, other questions? Anyone else have anything else you want to talk about? All right, sounds great. So I think we all need that little break before the next meeting. I'm sure we're all on a Teams meeting in 3 minutes somewhere in the world. So thank you, everyone. Our next meeting will be in January, so we'll get out some topics and things like that. As always, reach out to any of us with ideas for topics and what you want to hear about. We have a couple of thoughts kind of going into the next round of sessions, but we're always open to ideas. So thank you all. Enjoy your break before your next call.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.